great. Well, thanks everyone for being here. I was really excited to see a full house. Thank you, Friday. No collaboration from the weather, but you're still here, so thank you all. I can't tell you how much I imagine this means to the people who are sitting in the jury box there, but let me speak for them and say this means the world to them. So thank you all. I want to give a round of applause to our audience. Thank you for being here. So I'm Judge Faruqi. I am so thrilled to be here today. It's the first time ever we're having a debate in a courthouse of incarcerated students against students from James Madison University. Just two housekeeping things. If you can please remember to keep your cell phones on silent. This is court. While it's a debate, it's still court, so we've got to treat it like court. We have our esteemed judicial panel here. I'd ask again that if you have any questions or concerns, anything afterwards, I'm happy to talk to you, but once the debate starts, this is it. We've got to keep this as not for audience participation. If you want to, you can take pictures. There's no issue with that. We have media as well here. We're appreciative that they're here to cover this historic event. One thing, I'm going to get into thank yous, but one thing I got to say first, real quick, there's nothing more dangerous, the marshals know, and that's a very pregnant pause after we're dangerous, than me on an open microphone. Without a good off script, so I don't like that. But I have to do it because there's not one, but two things I want to recognize. First, one of our guest coaches, or the coaches for the students, Tori Schieber, it's her husband's wedding anniversary today. Thank you for what a way to celebrate your anniversary. That's wonderful. And the other thing is, I'd be remiss. I know that there are multiple really, really important family members here, but as my mom still reminds me, just because I'm a judge doesn't mean she can't discipline me. So I have my mom here. I'm very grateful that she's here today. I know we have Sarah's mom. If you're a parent of someone who's involved with this program, please can you stand up? So I know at least two of them. Sarah's mom, my mom, anyone who's a family member, please stand up. Okay, now I'm going to get back to script. So I want to thank the people that made this possible. I am so deeply grateful to Marshall Carter. I can't begin to even tell you how nervous I was to come up and ask the Marshal. Marshal, we want to bring 13 incarcerated people here to the courtroom, have a bunch of district judges. I don't want to remind him how crazy it sounds now that I'm asking it. And his immediate answer was, yes, let's do it. That sounds like a great idea. No hesitation. And I think that's just such a credit to this Marshal as a person and his team that he has here. It doesn't matter what a judge says. It doesn't matter our chief judge who couldn't be here, but extends his welcomes everyone here. Everyone said, if the marshals can do this, it'd be great, but they're the ones who are sticking their neck out on the line, doing all this extra work. And so I just think we all need to give them an enormous round of applause. Chief Judge, as I said, Chief Judge Boasberg sends his greetings. He had to go for a family event, so he's out of town, but he was looking forward to being here. Sorry they can't, but he welcomes everyone to the courthouse. I also spoke to Chief Judge Srinivasan. The DC Circuit is sitting right now upstairs, doing whatever those nerds do. But he also sends his regards. I know obviously we have judges in the audience. I'm so grateful that they're here, and you'll hear that we have some of our guest judges here as well. I also want to thank our amazing debate coaches. Tori Schieber, Aaron Barrett, Jackson Urbanbach, and Sarah Istel. We're all here. They go every Tuesday and Wednesday on their volunteer time and coach the students on the inside. It's incredibly generous of them with all the things that they have going on, that they always make time to prioritize the humanity of our students. I'm so grateful to that. I also see Professor Snow, who runs a class on Thursday. So we have a lot of people here, educators, and they could not do what they do without the incredible collaboration that we have from the DC Department of Corrections. So we have Jason McCready, who's head of education, Tarkita Williams, who I always just say she's the boss. I think she's a long time there, but that's just what I call her. Mr. Andrew Mazzucchelli, who's the general counsel of the DOC. Satara Yele, who's the chief press officer, one of the special advisors to the director. And most importantly, we have Deputy Director Jacqueline Williams here. So we're going to have them come up in a second, but I want to take a moment. One of the things that students always ask is, what can I do to improve criminal justice in our country? I tell them 3 things, and then there are many federal public defenders here, so please cover your ears. First, I tell them think about becoming a prosecutor. That's really important. You want to be in a role where you are part of law enforcement, or go into law enforcement. Everyone anyone has a complaint, you have to get off the sidelines. You got to get involved. That's what you have to do. It's easy to sit at home and complain. You got to get involved. Another way to do that, obviously you see here, when we have a thoughtful, compassionate leaders like we have in our Marshal Service that can get involved, that is one way to do it. But the final way I would say to students always, go to a jail. Don't just go there to visit and coach, but think about working there. Jason, Tarkita, I know that they don't get as much credit they should from the community. They have the hardest job in the world, going inside there every day and trying to find ways to lift up the voices there. So I'm so grateful for leadership from Deputy Director Williams, Mr. Mazzucchelli, but all the folks there that collaborate now with Georgetown, UDC, Howard, a lot of local universities, but thank you for everything you do. I know I'm speaking to folks in the box there, they love to fuss with Jason, but they also know that without Jason, none of this stuff happens to Tarkita, so thank you so much. So first I told Marshal Carter I wasn't just pulling his leg, I'd like him to come over here and just give brief remarks. I think it's really important that we hear from you since it's really your vision that made this happen. Thank you.
Again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Appreciate you for facilitating this and even asking me. I come from an environment where I know a lot of friends that are on the other side of the justice system. And I've grown up with them, going to school with them. I know that they are educated, they're articulate, they're smart people, but unfortunately they never had an opportunity to let the world hear their voice. You guys have an opportunity to let the world hear your voice here today, so thank you for being here. Good luck, and I appreciate it.
Okay, then Mr. Mazzucchelli and Deputy Director Williams, if you don't mind coming up here for the DOC.
Good afternoon. To our partners, teachers, coaches, and these 2 awesome debate teams. My name is Jacqueline Williams. I'm the Deputy Director for Education, Programs, and Case Management with the DC Department of Corrections. And on behalf of our Director, Tom Faust, who could not be here today, we are just so excited and humbled by this moment to engage in this momentous occasion where we're all actually witnessing history in the making. For everyone who played a role in the logistics and planning of this great event, thank you for your support and tireless efforts to enriching the lives and improving the lives of our residents and providing a platform for growth and development and support. A special shout out to Judge Faruqi, the champion of all champions, who has supported this DCDOC and all of our innovative program opportunities that we provide to our residents. I'm so excited for this great debate and to be a part of this moment. I want to bring up our General Counsel for remarks as well.
Yes. So I'm Andrew Mazzucchelli. I'm the General Counsel for the DOC, and I just want to say that this moment right here is a true testament to our terrific partnership with the court, with the U.S. Marshals. It is an amazing opportunity to be able to be here and to be able to, again, see history in the making. When you sort of engage in these skills, oration, just thinking about a lot of the broader topics in life, these are issues and these are skills that everyone will be able to gain and use beyond their time at the Department of Corrections. And I'm so happy to be part of this. I'm so happy to be able to sort of be here and experience this. So on behalf of the agency, thank you so much for everything, and we look forward to more of a great partnership in the future.
I want to briefly introduce our judges. So you seem to our esteemed panel. I'm going to start with Kuntal Kalra. He is an attorney who's held multiple roles at the United States Department of Justice, most recently in the Office of the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. But more importantly than his many great achievements in the legal profession, he is a star debater. He's one of our Ringer judges, not only an accomplished lawyer, but he spoke to a panel of students, and we had another guest coach that day, and he said, well, he probably doesn't remember me because he was busy beating me every time he came up. So we know he's a great debater. I'm so appreciative for him to be here today in his personal capacity. I also want to next recognize Judge Friedrich. I always like to say I'm the Robin to her Batman. I think she always tries to flip it around, but since I have a microphone, she can't speak over me. But I think a lot of today is about dispelling preconceived notions of things that we have of people, and I think those examples are not just of any one person in the room, it's everyone. So Judge Friedrich is a former prosecutor. She served on the Sentencing Commission. She was appointed by President Trump. Prior to that, she also worked in the Bush White House. I can say with absolute certainty in our heart that no one goes over to the jail, I think, more than her, because she is, even if she's not there in person, her heart is always there thinking about what's happening, how can we do work to make sure we're lifting up the voice of the people in there. I know everyone in that jury box where knows Judge Friedrich and cares about the programming that she brings to the jail. And so I just ask again that we take a moment, try to get out of our shoes and think about who are the people in front of us today, give them a chance, let them be the people they actually are, not the people we have preconceived notions. Judge Friedrich is, in fact, a district judge here on our court, has had many, many important high-profile cases. But again, one of the things I most appreciate is the work that she's doing to try to lift up voices from all backgrounds. Next, I'm going to introduce Judge Michael Nachmanoff. Like George Washington crossing the river, he crossed the Potomac and came here today, so we're very grateful to he's a judge from the Eastern District of Virginia. Most importantly, he was unfortunately demoted from being a magistrate judge to become a district judge, but I still love him even though he got promoted to his new role, not too new now. Judge Nachmanoff is the federal public defender in the Eastern District of Virginia. I'd just like to point out there, so you have prosecutors, you have defense lawyers. Turn off your televisions. People from different points of views can get along, and we can get along well, actually. We talk civilly, we appreciate each other. So just remember that today, again, for all the people in this room, set aside those preconceived notions. I'm so appreciative to Judge Nachmanoff for coming here again. It's amazing when I ask folks, Judge Friedrich, we asked them, would you be willing to come out here today? They just said, tell me when to show up, where, and when I'm there. I'm so excited. So deeply appreciative, Judge Nachmanoff, to be here today. And next, I want to introduce Judge Walton, who's serving as our Chief Judge today. Judge Walton, if I could say, is kind of like the godfather of the courthouse. He carries the moral gravitas that maybe many of us aspire, wish to one day have. Unlike me, who talks a lot, he knows how to pick his spots, and when he says things, everyone listens. Judge Walton is a former public defender and a prosecutor. He has served on many national commissions, including ones on reducing violence inside of the prison system and within the military. He started because of Judge Walton. We have a reentry court. Many of you here today, I'm so glad, every other Thursday at 4 o'clock in Judge Walton's courtroom. He came up with the idea that we start a court for people at high risk of recidivism. So not low risk, the highest of the high. People who are the most in need of assistance. Judge Walton decided it is this court's job to help not just punish and worry about recidivate, but actually rehabilitate. That is the word that we are focused on, and I can't begin to tell you, through his moral leadership, what that court, the Rebuilding Our Lives court, what it's done for so many people. We have people who have homes. We have people the first time open a bank account. One of our reentry court members, she's like, I'm just kind of embarrassed. I was like, whatever. She's like, I got a car. I was like, what kind of car do you have? A Lexus. I was like, that's right, send me a picture. This is something you dreamed about your whole life. Celebrate these victories. And it's, I think, in large part to, again, the leadership of Judge Walton in our reentry court. It's extraordinary the work he's done. We're so lucky to have him here. And finally, last but not least, my dear friend, Maura DeMoy, who is Assistant Dean for Experiential Education at Georgetown University. She leads the nation's leading program for underserviced law students, people of diverse backgrounds, first in their family to go to law school, people, no matter who they come from, what path, they just feel like they need a little bit of help getting through law school. She created and runs this program, which is a second full-time job on top of her regular one. And so I'm so appreciative for our judges here. Let's give them a round of applause for being here today. just going to last introduce our debaters, the best part of the day. So arguing for the affirmative, our topic today is abolishing life without parole. The affirmative's position that we should abolish life without parole. The DC Defense Coalition. Those who have a speaking role today, so not everyone will speak, but our speakers to begin with is Eleanor Tori Poppy. Nakia Cunningham. Carol Cunningham. Dante Gardner. Nathaniel Perkin. And Lorenzo Goldsmith. I also want to introduce the team's alternate speakers who are essential to the team's preparations. That's who they were sparring against when all our coaches were in there each week. And so they're just as important. I want to make sure they're recognized. Khalil Hewitt. Gianni Robinson. Charles Brooks. London Teeter. Sharon Eggleston. Aisha Taz. And our ANC chairwoman, Shamika Hayes. And then we have from James Madison University. I want to recognize these are students. It's terrible because my mom's here. I wish I could tell her to cover her ears. This is the last thing I was doing when I was in college, just making sure I would go do important events like this. I was busy doing other things that probably get used to my time. So I'm so appreciative for these students and their coach to come up here. They drove from James Madison University. It's incredible that you have such dedication, not only to debate, to challenge yourself, but to be here at this historic event. So I have the team. I want to introduce them and. So Tarang Mishra, who is a senior, junior Drake McConneville, senior James Balda, and a junior Anna Oler. Welcome to the JV debate team. All right, with that, we're about ready to get started. I'll just close out one thing. Judge Friedrich suggested that I too should guest. I said I can't because I'm biased in favor of one team, and so I'll close with the remarks that they said. Debate is really important. I just want to remind that. I'm so grateful that my parents at a young age got me involved in high school debate. It is a way to open doors. As Marshall Carter said, everyone sitting in this room, but especially in that box, understands you got to learn to advocate for yourself. A lot of times you have arguments to make, but you don't have the framework. All that the coaches are doing, all we're trying to do is give them those tools to unlock the doors that have previously been locked to them. And our coaches have done an amazing job. You're going to see that today. But debate changed my life. Debate is what got me here today, not to mention hard work from my parents, of course, the community, but debate taught me to think analytically, how to argue, and you're going to see that today. But it also teaches you sometimes when you know you can't do something. That's why I said I couldn't be a judge, because I am biased in favor of one team. And I'll close with the remark. I told before, my 9-year-old son, I said, any advice I should give the team? And what everybody told you said, make sure you smoke those fools. All right.
If you can just say your full name, please. And let's just go aside to debaters.
Dante Gardner.
All right, Dante, 1 second, actually. Okay, ready to go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Dante Gardner. I'm currently a resident at the DC jail, but I've been a resident of Washington, DC my entire life. My teammates and I are tasked today with convincing you that the United States of America must abolish life without parole, or as you'll hear me refer to it as LWOP. I'll start by defining what LWOP is, and then I'll explain 4 initial reasons on why the United States must abolish this practice. For the purpose of this debate, we define LWOP according to Black's Law Dictionary as, quote, a lifetime imprisonment without the possibility of release. Our position is simply that the United States must abolish LWOP. To be clear, we are not suggesting that there are certain individuals who cannot be incarcerated for life. We simply argue that the United States of America should never impose a lifetime sentence without the possibility of release. And we leave it to the government to determine what mechanisms should be applied. I will now explain why OWOP should be abolished, arguing first that OWOP, as determined by international law, violates human dignity. Second, that OWOP is cruel and unusual. Third, OWOP is racist and inequitable. And fourth, OWOP does not deter crime, so it cannot be justified. First, OWOP values human dignity, which underpins our democracy. The question of specific relevance to OWOP that we must ask ourselves today is whether forcing individuals to abandon the hope of freedom in a free society is a fundamental denial of human dignity. And we submit the answer is absolutely yes. The very essence of human dignity is attacked if the prisoner must abandon all hope of ever regaining his freedom. As found in a recent global human rights analysis, human dignity is a core organizing principle for both human rights and democratic ideals. And the connection between hope and human dignity is to be found in the concept of the right to personal development. The inverse suggests that any punishment that fundamentally infringes human rights and personal development is both unlawful and immoral. These principles have led to an increasing worldwide recognition that all prisoners be provided with an opportunity to change themselves. In 1977, Germany's Federal Constitutional Court outlawed OWOP, finding that, quote, the essence of human dignity is attacked if the prisoner, notwithstanding his own personal development, must abandon any hope of ever regaining his freedom. In 2013, over a decade ago, the European Court of Human Rights agreed and concluded that Article 3 of the European Convention of Human Rights prohibited OWOP as a form of, quote, inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. It went on to note that there is now clear support in the European and international law for the principle that all prisoners, including those serving life sentences, be offered the possibility of rehabilitation and the prospect of release if that rehabilitation is achieved. Coupled with this was the right to hope, which was seen closely related as an inherent human capacity to change, to develop positively, and thus to rehabilitate. As Judge Powerford wrote in the concurrence to the European Court opinion, that those who commit even the most apparent and egregious of acts and who inflict untold suffering upon others, nevertheless, they retain their fundamental humanity and carry within themselves the capacity to change. And to deny them the experience of hope, the court found, would be to deny a fundamental aspect of their humanity, and to do that would be degrading and therefore unlawful. Jurisdictions as diverse as Belize, Gambia, and Zimbabwe have rejected OWOP in the wake of the European Court opinion. The International Criminal Tribunal in 2015 likewise found that, quote, the relevant international legal standards strongly suggest that those sentenced to life imprisonment are not barred from being considered for early release, and that the rehabilitative principle and the respect for human dignity require the possibility of release. So, ladies and gentlemen, what does that say about the United States? That is continuing a practice that a human rights body determined was inhumane or degrading punishment over a decade ago. And retribution over rehabilitation, is that really what we want to be known for as a country? Second, as evidenced by international law, retaining OWOP is cruel and unusual, even by our own standards. And it is indeed unusual that the United States claims to be the greatest democracy in the world, but despite composing roughly 4% of the world's population, the United States houses 40% of the world's population serving life sentences. And 83% of those prisoners are serving life without parole. Imprisonment rates and the number of life sentences in the United States are greater than any democratic country. In fact, the United States incarcerates at 5 times the rate than most countries. U.S. District Judge Alderman said, for example, that the United States incarcerates so many of its citizens that it's become an outlier, and not just among developed democracies, but even among autocracies, such as Russia, and punitive states like South Africa. OWOP is not even reserved for the most heinous of crimes, with 24% of the OWOP population in the United States serving for offenses other than murder. According to research conducted by the Sentencing Project in 2021, 20% of Florida's OWOP sentences are for robbery, and Virginia reports 14% of its life sentence population has been convicted of an aggravated assault. Incarcerating individuals for a lifetime, especially for lesser offenses, is certainly cruel punishment. Third, America's over-punishment problem, including through issues of OWOP, perpetuates inequality and racism, as it is unfairly applied to persons of color and of low socioeconomic status, giving rise to the term mass incarceration. There is a striking association between mass incarceration and increased inequality. As found by a recent U.S. District Judge, 33% of the incarcerated population is African American, almost 3 times the 12% African American share of the general population. And close to 40% of the 2.2 million prisoners are African American males. And at this current rate, 1/3 of every black male will be in prison at some point in their lifetime. Nationally, 2/3 of people serving life sentences are people of color. And among people serving LWOP, 55% are black, according to the Census Project 2021 study. Even more striking, in 2016, 82.2% of LWOP for nonviolent offenses were non-white, and 65 were black. So let's face it, LWOP is racist and inequitable. Finally, eliminating LWOP has not been found to increase crime rates. In fact, to date, there has been no empirical assessment of LWOP's efficacy to a crime-fighting tool. Rather, a recent meta-analysis of 116 studies found no evidence that confinement reduces recidivism, and the National Research Council recently concluded that statutes mandating lengthy prison sentences cannot be justified on the basis of their effectiveness in preventing crime. Echoing this research for decades, which consistently showed that short sentences deter just as much as longer ones, and that most people, including people serving life and long sentences, mature and desist from crime. So given the human rights concerns, undemocratic nature, high costs, racially and socioeconomically disproportionate impact, our opponents should be able to demonstrate that LWOP is substantially effective, but they cannot. So what benefit does LWOP have to justify it? LWOP has not been seen to produce any additional crime reduction rate beyond what is produced by parole-eligible life sentences, which is what we propose. Findings instead indicate that to the extent that incarceration can produce lower crime rates, the effect of increasing sentencing severity maxes out at some point prior to LWOP. These conclusions are in line with the deterrence literature, which indicates that certainty of punishment is more important than its severity, and that increasing already lengthy prison terms is not an effective way to fight crime. According to the Census Project reviewed this year, a robust body of empirical literature shows that people released after decades of imprisonment, including for murder, have low as in 2% recidivism rates. This research has been proven by recent actions in this country. Our position is that not everyone will be redeemed, and that simply that human rights include the right to hope, which requires the possibility of release. Pope Francis said, and we agree, that long and deserved that their prison sentences may be, that all prisoners retain the right to hope that someday they may have atoned for the wrongs in which they have committed. In a world where we do not give up on people who have done terrible things, there's a far better world than the alternative. In conclusion, LWOP violates human dignity, victimizes the value of our democracy, perpetuates the inequality of racism, and is not even shown to reduce crime, and therefore LWOP must be abolished.
All right, now we can have cross-examination from the negative.
So my first question is, what's the year cap? Like, how long of a sentence could someone receive?
We're not putting a cap on it. We leave that to the government to determine which mechanisms should be applied and what actually should be in place in order to determine the person's being rehabilitated.
That is my second question. Have you read any evidence or made any arguments about how we determine if a person was rehabilitated or how that process works?
We have not. However, it's been shown that LWOP does not deter crime. And evidence shows that LWOP does not deter crime more than life with parole.
Okay. How do you weigh the risk of reoffense? You think someone's rehabilitated, you release them, and then they reoffend. How do we weigh that against the idea that, how do we weigh a severe reoffense, i.e. murder, against a whopping you're out of control?
Well, the idea that perpetrators of any specific crime like murder cannot be rehabilitated is false. People released from prison who were originally convicted of homicide are actually less likely than other prisoners to be rearrested for violent crime.
How do you account for juries assigning the death penalty instead of LWOP for severe crimes? Like, why would a jury not just decide this is a really bad crime? This person should be allowed to decide you can't do outlaw, so we're just gonna do the death penalty instead.
So there is no evidence that abolishing LWOP will increase the use of the death penalty. The only empirical evidence shows no link between the introduction of LWOP and a decline in the use of the death penalty. But regardless, LWOP is wrong, and it does not deter crime. It harms communities, it costs a lot, and it is administrated in racist ways. So rather than speculate on whether it will increase another bad form of punishment, and again, there is no evidence to support such speculation, we should be focusing on how to ensure that our senior citizens have a chance of rehabilitation.
That's what I.
Thank you.
So we'll now hear from James Madison with the first negative constructive argument. Again, it'll be 9 minutes. One second. All right. If you can give your name again, please, sir.
Drake McConville.
All right, thanks so much, Drake, when you're ready.
Hi, my name is Drake McConville, and I'm with the JMU debate team. We stand in firm negation of the resolution. I will be giving a short history of the topic, a counterplan to the affirmative team, and a disadvantage to the affirmative's plan. Starting with the history. The rate of recidivism amongst homicide offenders is extremely high, the highest of any offender. The evidence I am about to read reinforces that claim through statistical data on recidivism for violent crime and murder. This is proven with a couple pieces of key evidence. Firstly, 2% of homicide offenders who are released from U.S. prisons committed another murder. Research from the Bureau of Justice Studies tracked that arrested more than 400,000 people exiting prisons in 2005 across 30 states. The majority of these were for assault, and 1% included a homicide. My next piece of evidence talks about how the homicide offenders on parole have 1 to 3% risk of committing another murder and a 7 to 16% risk of committing violence. This is a study from Harvard University. The degree of recidivism of homicide offenders studies assesses specific recidivism and finds specific recidivism rates ranging from 1 to 3%, and the rates of violent recidivism lie somewhere between, ranging from 7% to 16%. My next piece of evidence talks about a Roberts study that concludes felony homicide offenders have the highest recidivist rate amongst offenders. The majority of homicide offender recidivists reoffended within 2 to 3 years of release from prison. A prior criminal record for previous violent offenders is one of the main factors that distinguish recidivists from non-recidivists. In their study on 336 released homicide offenders, Roberts found that recidivism was the highest in felony homicide groups. And finally, my last piece of evidence shows from a Pennsylvania study of paroled homicide offenders and found that 15% committed a violent offense. Using data from that Pennsylvania study, they extracted all individuals who committed a homicide in Philadelphia between 1977 and 1983 and who were paroled. Of the 92 paroled homicide offenders, 54% recidivated and 15% recidivated with a violent offense. These pieces of evidence show a clear history that the worst criminal offenders continue to commit violent crime even after release, even after attempts at rehabilitation. Moving to our counterplan. We introduced a counterplan to the affirmative team's plan. The United States should abolish life without parole sentences in all instances, except in regard to the most dangerous offenders. This is the best policy option because it encompasses the worst criminals while preventing overuse of life without parole sentencing. My first piece of evidence shows that life without parole for first-degree murder is justified to permanently remove the most dangerous persons and to uphold society's code of decency. This is from a district attorney in 2021. To be clear, life without parole should be reserved for only the worst criminal offenders, first-degree murderers. As a society, we must maintain a clear standard of decency. The sentence of life without parole is an expression of that standard, and the value of a human life taken with such depravity requires permanent removal from society. My next piece of evidence says the optimal policy option is to apply life without parole to the most dangerous offenders. This is from an associate professor of law and philosophy at Northwestern, Joshua Kleinfeld. American criminal punishment is in my view right in thinking that among criminal offenders, some are bad and even evil people who need to be controlled and who warrant severe punishment. American criminal punishment is not too harsh because it reserves the ability to severely punish some people, but because it meters out severe punishment to far too many people. A society can afford to say that a few people, it can afford to say that to a few people, but it cannot afford to say that to large portions of the population. What we need is a punishment system that is European with respect to the vast majority of offenders and American with the respect to this sliver remaining. Finally, my last piece of evidence says that first-degree murderers should permanently lose their freedom, and releasing them is a moral abomination. This is from Roanoke Times writer James A. Bacon. I don't care if age killers are no longer a threat to society. I don't care if it costs taxpayers money to maintain them in state facilities. There's one simple rule. If you commit first-degree murder, you forfeit your freedom for the rest of your life. There may be a handful of less horrific criminal offenses where it may make sense to rethink the policy of life without parole. But a sweeping abolition of mandatory minimum sentences would be a moral abomination. To summarize, the evidence makes a clear case that life without parole is an effective form of justice for the worst criminal offenders, and to do otherwise is immoral. Finally, our disadvantage to the affirmative plan is that abolishing life without parole will revive the use of the death penalty and halt progress towards limiting capital punishment. This is from a New York University law professor, Rachel Barkov, in 2012. In response to the Supreme Court's decision in Furman, several states adopted LWOP for the first time. New Mexico's decision to abolish the death penalty was directly tied to its embrace of LWOP. There's empirical evidence that the availability of LWOP has led to a reduction in death sentences in jurisdictions that have both. Richard Dieter, the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, puts it, having a stated alternative that sounds tough makes a big difference. James Liebman, a leading scholar of the death penalty, has similarly observed that the availability of LWOP has been absolutely crucial to whatever progress has been made against the death penalty. If LWOP is no longer available as an option, no one could imagine more calls for death sentences, either as a matter of incapacitation, retribution, or deterrence. My next piece of evidence shows that 20-year cap sentences replacing life imprisonment will lead to greater use of the death penalty. This is from a senior correspondent of Vox, German Lopez. A cap may incentivize courts and juries to send more people to death row if life imprisonment is no longer an option. Finally, my last piece of evidence shows that LWOP has been vital to decreasing the use of the death penalty. This is from a state professor of legal studies, Jessica Henry. Liebman, a professor of law at Columbia, explains, life without parole has been absolutely crucial to whatever progress has been made against the death penalty. The drop in death sentences would not have happened without LWOP. The evidence shows that complete abolition of life without parole causes the rise of the death penalty and halts the current attempts to slow down. Only the counterplan is able to solve for the worst offenders without triggering the circumstances in which the death penalty would be revoked. As the evidence has shown, first-degree murderers who commit the worst crimes are most likely to commit those crimes again when released from jail. Life without parole is the only way to keep first-degree murderers behind bars, unable to commit these crimes again. Even if you believe that life without parole should be abolished for most criminals, I strongly urge you to vote negative and endorse the counterplan that we have introduced, and hold first-degree murderers accountable while making it impossible for less serious crimes to be met with the same punishment. Thank you.
Ready for cross-examination from the affirmative?
You agree that there are more than 20,000 people serving life sentences and more than 55,000 people serving LWOP in the United States, correct?
Yes.
As documented by Bureau and National Institute of Corrections, incarceration costs an average $33,000 per inmate per year. That cost doubles for elderly persons over 50 to 60,000 per inmate per year. That's $6 billion to $12 billion per year to incarcerate prisoners serving life sentences. So, given the resources are limited and that LWOP has not been statistically proven to reduce crime Isn't that billions of dollars better spent on rehabilitation programs which have been shown to reduce recidivism and strengthen the community?
What we're trying to argue is that LWOP is used as a way to remove the most dangerous first-degree murderers from society, and that we're able to use LWOP as a way to keep them from being able to leave from prison or from jail.
Okay, thank you. Iceland has been the safest country in the world for the past 14 years, and no one in Iceland has ever served a life sentence. Other countries like the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom, all of which abolish life without parole, have lowered the average homicide rates. If the safest countries in the world don't lock people away without parole, how can we argue that LWOP makes the U.S. safer?
We read evidence that said that recidivism amongst violent criminals, and specifically first-degree murderers, are the highest amongst any offenders, and that in America the recidivism rate is so high that the risk of them leaving and committing that crime again is too high, and that we need to have LWOP to prevent that from happening.
The European Court of Human Rights concluded that in 2013, Article 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights prohibited LWOP as a form of, quote, inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. If the U.S. aims to serve as a leader of human rights, how can the U.S. uphold a practice that the European Convention on Human Rights outlawed inhumane degrading over a decade ago?
So what we're arguing is that life without parole is firstly a better option than the death penalty, which would rise without having any kind of life without parole. We also are only, under the counter plan, we're only using life without parole for first-degree murderers and the most violent offenders, or the most dangerous offenders, which would mean that any risk that too many people have been given life without parole.
The U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics data revealed that 98% of the persons released from prison on homicide convictions. If such a large percentage of even the most serious of offenders can rehabilitate, how can we justice a practice that prevents even the chance of parole? Shouldn't all persons deserve that chance?
This will be the last question for you to answer.
Sure. Could you repeat the question one more time?
The U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics data revealed that 98% of the persons released from prison on homicide convictions. If such a large percentage of even the most serious of offenders can rehabilitate, how can we justice a practice that prevents even the chance of parole? Shouldn't all persons deserve a chance?
We say that some people cannot be rehabilitated and that they are too dangerous to be released and have a chance to commit that crime.
Hi, my name is James Ball. I'm giving the first negative rebuttal.
Your name again, sir?
My name is Jameson Baldwin. Thank you. I will review what the first negative constructed discussed and answer the first affirmative for contentions that they introduced during their first speech. I will start by reviewing our piece of evidence that abolishing life without parole for all individuals fails. The Barack evidence says that there is empirical evidence that the availability of life without parole has led to a mass reduction in death sentences in jurisdictions where they have both punishments. This ensures that inmates who do not deserve the death penalty do not receive it, as juries have the option of life without parole. Additionally, the Crime and Live evidence cites research from the Bureau of Justice Statistics and Revision of Rates, which tracks arrests for 400,000 people across 30 states, found that 2% of those offenders committed other murders, and that 7 to 60% of those offenders have risks of committing more violence across the country. I will go on to answer the affirmative specific contentions regarding their plan. First is dignity. The EU Court of Human Rights opinion arguing that life without parole violates dignity is not supported by Kantian philosophy, which is the dominant philosophy utilized by the West for effective and ethical governance. As shown by Joshua Kleinfeld, an associate professor of law and philosophy at Northwestern University, that the Vinter opinion that the EU Court of Justice gave found that the court sees as problematic that a rehabilitated offender cannot be forgiven. What is wrong with that? What does this concept of dignity mean? European dignitary tradition is often associated with Kant, but Kant would never have supported a decision for soft treatment of human beings, capacity for freedom and reason. European law and concept of dignity has drifted far away from Kant's substance. Additionally, the counterplan will resolve this issue, as it would show that most of dangerous offenders are the only ones capable of pursuing LLO. The next contention is the cruelty. Even if it's cruel, the affirmative does not consider instances in which the release of the most dangerous offenders, victims' families will be harmed psychologically, and how it traumatizes them. The mere possibility of affording parole hearings to first-degree murderers will traumatize the family of victims. This is shown by Joshua W. Block, District Attorney in 2021, where he writes that the bill that would do this would eliminate the sentence of life without parole, and that the sentence imposed on these convicted of first-degree murders, that is the most heinous crime, taking a life with the preemption, extreme atrocity, and cruelty. Even then, the disadvantage would be even more crueler, as it would ensure that victims that would be assigned LLO would instead be assigned the death penalty and would not have the possibility of having life in prison. Next is the racism and inequality argument. The disadvantage to the plan would ensure that mass incarceration would instead lead to mass death. And we had read evidence in our first constructive that gives empirical examples in which instances where LLO has been reversed has led to a severe increase of the death penalty being assigned to inmates. It mentions an instance of New Mexico, the reversal of LLO led to an increase of the death penalty. The affirmative was incorrect in cross-examination, but absent the availability of life without parole in some instances, it leads to increased calls for more death sentences because of motives of incapacitation, retribution, or deterrence, inevitably making lives of prisoners worse and turning the affirmative's case. Their last point is failure to deter, but the Barak evidence proves that this is empirically false. It says that there's empirical evidence that the availability of life without parole has led to a reduction in death sentences in jurisdictions that have seen both punishments, ensure that inmates are allowed more fair hearings. They make an additional point near the end of the speech about recidivism. The affirmative, I would like to point out that Europe, bans of life without parole have failed and assume that every single criminal cannot be rehabilitated. As shown by Joshua Kleinfeld, Associate Professor of Law and Philosophy, Northwestern, Europe's mildness of punishment tricks it as utopian in ways that is both dangerous and offensive. The root of the whole system is the minimization of wrongdoings, both individual responsibility and for the wrongdoing itself. Additionally, rehabilitation fails on mass scales because it is inevitable that some dangerous people will be released given the state of rehabilitation and valuability as experts and models make the determination. I will end with a closing statement that the negatives introduce a counterplan that sufficiently solves for all the concerns of the affirmative. The counterplan does the entirety of their plan, with the exception of the most dangerous offenders. This is sufficient to resolve the affirmative team's concerns about dignity, cruelty, racism and inequality, and LLO's failure to deter. And the counterplan would ensure that the death penalty would not be racked en masse in 30 states. Throughout this debate, you must ask yourself, which team provides the most ethical policy that balances justice and safety for the public? Thank you.
My name is Nikki Cunningham, and I'm going to be doing affirmative first rebuttals. Our opponents have spoke, their first argument was about recidivism. So the most heinous crime, especially the one that the negative has spoke so much about, is murder. So the statistics show that only 98% of homicide offenders that actually return home do not commit another homicide. That's almost 100%. 1 to 3 people that are on parole commit violent, reoffend violently, and that is a very low number compared to the risk of keeping people incarcerated forever and throwing their lives away. Also, we weren't sure if I'm sure that those people weren't offered high-quality reentry programs such as the ones that are available today in 2024. There are many programs that are offered to people at a fraction of the cost that can effectively rehabilitate people and support returning citizens in our communities. The next argument that the negative made was the most dangerous offenders should remain incarcerated. So they said that people that are convicted of first-degree murder should never be rehabilitated. But I wanted to bring your attention also to a woman named Janelle Richardson, who was incarcerated for first-degree murder, and she actually returned home after serving her sentence, and she actually made really positive benefits to her community. She started a foundation that supports criminal justice initiatives and criminal reform. So that's one example of someone who actually came home and made a difference. And there are several other people who actually committed murder, even first-degree murder, who came home and made a difference. The negative also argued that the death penalty will increase. That the death penalty will be increased if LWOP is abolished. But the death penalty is the death penalty in disguise. Either way, people are waiting to die in prison. Those sentenced to LWOP are at a disadvantage compared to those sentenced to death because they have more appeal rights. Lawyers and justice initiatives work tirelessly and aggressively to exonerate or spare the lives of those on death row. LWOPers don't have those same protections. The negative claims that we support death penalty, and that's completely false. The negative also spoke on victims' families, but there's no evidence that victims' families unequivocally support LWOP. A recent study from the University of Washington concluded that crime victims overwhelmingly oppose prison sentences and prefer investment funds in prevention and rehabilitation. By abolishing LWOP, we free up billions, literally billions of dollars, because we no longer have to incarcerate senior citizens, which can cost over $60,000 annually per inmate. The U.S. will have substantial resources to devote toward rehabilitation programs, including for victims, families, and survivors. Those programs have documented proof of success in reducing crime. Victims' families need comprehensive support that cannot necessarily be met by LWOP. That's not the only way to get closure. Not all crime victim families support a punitive approach. Actually, crime victims overwhelmingly oppose long prison sentences and prefer investing funds on prevention and rehabilitation. Empirically, and what about the negative? Didn't speak on how LWOP actually can destroy families. How? By permanently removing 53,000 people from society, destabilizing families, countless others are left behind. What about the victims? What about the families of those who are incarcerated? Children, spouses, and parents and loved ones face lifelong stress, trauma, and financial strain as they work to maintain relationships that will never be the same again. People serving LWOP sentences miss their children's weddings and their parents' funerals. Children grow up knowing they will never see their parents outside of a visitation home. Additionally, so Viktor Frankl, psychoanalyst and Auschwitz camp survivor, said that prisoners agreed the most depressing influence of all was that a prisoner could not know how long his term of imprisonment would be. He had not been given a date for his release. A prison term is not only uncertain, but an unlimited provisional existence of an unknown limit. So the word finite has two meanings, the end or finished, and a goal to reach. A man who could not see the end of his provisional sentence was not able to aim at an ultimate goal in life. Therefore, the inner structure of his inner life decayed. Signs of decay set in, which we know from other areas of life. The negative supports the decaying of people. LWOP should therefore be abolished.
Hi everyone, my name is Tarang Mishra, and I'm with James Madison University of 18, and I'm in firm negation of the resolution. So to give an overview, I will first talk about the counterplan, the DISAT, as well as the sort of affirmative case. So first, abolishing life without parole for all individuals is harmful to society, as it allows first-degree murderers to continuously cause harm within various areas of the country and revitalizes the use of the death penalty, halting progress towards limiting capital punishment. The piece of evidence read in our first negative constructive says that there is empirical evidence that the availability of life without parole has led to a reduction in death sentences in jurisdictions that have both punishments. Absent the availability of life without parole, in some instances, it leads to increased calls for more death sentences because of motives rooted in incapacitation, retribution, or deterrence, inevitably making lives for prisoners worse and turning the affirmative case. So I will start by responding to specific arguments made by the affirmative. The first argument made was about how there are statistics of 98% of homicide offenders being able to be rehabilitated. We are both pulling from the Bureau of Statistics of Justice, Bureau of Justice and Statistics. And specifically, this debate is about a question of preventing the 2%. So the 2% of individuals, even if there are 2% of individuals that commit first-degree murder, the question is, can the counterplan resolve those things? If the counterplan can resolve those things, you should ultimately vote negative to endorse the counterplan. The second argument was a story about Jane Richardson. Our argument is that regardless of specific examples, we should prefer empirical evidence, both proposed by the negative and the affirmative team, to deduct whether or not specific first-degree murders would continue to occur. Next, going on to the counterplan specifically, the counterplan is to abolish life without parole in all instances, except in regard to first-degree murders. It solves the entirety of the affirmative case and prevents multiple things. The first is it upholds society's codes of decency. The Blodgett evidence read in 1 and C says that life without parole is an expression of the standard of decency by being reserved for first-degree murders that take human life. The second is a moral abomination argument. The Kleinfeld and Bacon evidence that was read in 1 and C talks about how the affirmative is too morally lenient by not allowing for bad actors like the first-degree murderers to be controlled, increasing violence in large-scale populations. So at this point, it is a question of who resolves first-degree murders or the recidivism rates of first-degree murderers. So on the rehabilitation arguments that the affirmative has made, I'm going to read another piece of evidence. So this piece of evidence is by Matt Markovich, who was a reporter and it was made on February 8th of 2022. It says that serial killers like Gary Ridgway could be released if life without parole were particularly eliminated. It starts by saying serial killer Gary Ridgway, the Green River killer, could be released from prison if a bill passes that would eliminate life without parole. Washington eliminated the death penalty in 2018 with the argument that you can sentence someone like Gary Ridgway to life in prison without parole. Ridgway admitted killing 49 people, and one of them was 15-year-old Deborah Estes, sister of State Representative Jenny Graham. Quote, I did have a 4-hour conversation with him, and he did say if he got out, he would do this again, end quote, Graham told Fox 13 News. SB 5036 includes a provision that says prisoners who served a term of 25 years can ask the Clemency and Pardons Board to commute their sentence, therefore eliminating life without parole. If adopted, Ridgway will have completed his 25th year in prison in 2028 and would be eligible. The fact that there is no carve-out for somebody like Gary Ridgway that stalked and murdered 50 people, most of them children, and he did it because he enjoyed it, is wrong, said Graham. Our argument is that under the world of the counterplan, we should endorse the counterplan to prevent those first-degree murders from being able to continue violence within society. Now, the last argument that the affirmative makes is that there would be a litany of resources used if we abolish LWOP and put it into different rehabilitation programs. Our argument is that under the counterplan, we can still access those similar resources by abolishing LWOP in every instance other than first-degree murders, which means even if there is a small amount of first-degree murders that are committing crimes, it's a question of preventing those first-degree murders from continuing the harmful violence that occurs in the status quo. The next arguments are about sort of victim family trauma. I'm going to read a piece of evidence by Jonathan W. Blodgett, who was the Essex District Attorney, that was made on October 20th of 2020. It says the mere possibility of affording parole hearings to first-degree murderers will traumatize the families of victims. It starts off by talking about a Massachusetts legislature bill which would eliminate the sentence of life without parole, the sentence imposed upon those convicted of first-degree murder. That is the most heinous of crimes, taking a life with either premeditation, extreme atrocity, and cruelty. While the difference between no parole and the possibility of parole may not seem significant for most people, is a huge difference for many victims' families. The difference between the person who brutally extinguished the life of your loved one never walking free and the possibility that they may be paroled is night and day. Preparing for and attending a parole board hearing to oppose the parole of your loved one's killer is traumatic. For those families who know that is on the horizon, peace is elusive, in essence, sentencing them to a life of fear, worry, and suffering. So we have clearly established within the world of the counterplan that families who are suffering from incarcerated trauma, that are suffering from family members being incarcerated, would still be able to sort of access the specific resources necessary, aside from if the family member was the first degree murderer. So our argument is that that should be prevented because it causes more harm within society. So going on to some more arguments, specifically sort of the closing statement that I would like to make is I want you all to ask yourself, the only difference between the affirmative case and the counterplan is solely a question of preventing these first-degree murders from getting out into society. If the negative team has won that first-degree murderers have caused more psychological violence or the recidivism rates of those first-degree murders are higher, then you should vote negative to endorse the counterplan to prevent those first-degree murders from continuing to cause that violence. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Earl Cunningham. Criminal case number 95CRAA. Please take a good look at me, because you are looking at the representation of everything this debate is about. I am currently serving a life without parole sentence. So this debate is much more than a debate to me. It's about the over 55,000 Americans serving life without parole sentences like this. So in addition to the reasons my teammate gave why life without parole must be abolished, I will expand on 4 others. First, the high cost of life without parole and the resulting benefits of abolishing life without parole. Second, the mental health harmful effects. Third, life without parole destroys families. Fourth, the importance and feasibility of rehabilitation. The high cost. The annual cost of incarceration is generally estimated at about $30,000 per prison, which can easily double for elderly prisoners over the age of 50 to 60,000 a year. Thus, while an aging prisoner is less likely to be a harm to society, he becomes a double high burden on taxpayers if kept in prison. And in some states like Idaho, Massachusetts, South Dakota, and more than half of the inmates serving life without parole are 55 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, my 3 decades of incarceration stay has cost nearly $2 million of your taxpayers' dollars. That's just one person. Think of the cost of inmates across the U.S. over 60 years old costing taxpayers $60,000 a year each, which we submit that not only is that cost excessive, but has a negative consequences for the public safety. Public safety resources are finite and limited. Spending $2 million on me alone means diverting funds from crime-preventing programs such as policing, preschool program, rehabilitation program, including drug and mental health treatment, and Victims' Families Fund. Research done by the Sentencing Project demonstrates that these social intervention programs in fact produce greater public safety and deterrent benefits than expanding incarceration. If life without parole can be shown to reduce crime and its costs are both excessive and could be spent on resources to rehabilitate and prevent crime, it cannot remain. Second, life without parole substantially harms a person's mental health. As found in a study last year in the BMC Journal for Psychology, research suggested prison sentences have a null or criminogenic effect on recidivism and a critical impact on inmates' mental health. Endless incarceration harms mental and physical health, causing psychological and bodily harm, according to recent studies at the University of Washington. For example, rates of hypertension, chronic lung disease, heart disease are 2 to 4 times higher among incarcerated people. Such harms are further exacerbated without the hope of parole. People with life without parole score high on suicidal tests and have increased mood disorders, including major depression. Third, life without parole sentences are not just served by the incarcerated individual, they are served by their family members as well. Research indicates that children of incarcerated parents, children who are disproportionately black men and women, are 6 to 7 times more likely to end up incarcerated themselves. These families also face economic burdens of losing a parent who provides income. Once again, disproportionately affecting non-white families and further increasing the social economic disparity along racial lines. The hope of rehabilitating a parent and preventing children from becoming a prison member lies within the abolishment of life without parole. Finally, the notion that individuals cannot be rehabilitated even for the most severe crime is contradicted by reality. As the Sentencing Project noted in 2021, for those previously sentenced to life imprisonment who earn release, re-engagement in violence is rare, according to studies across Michigan, Pennsylvania, Maryland, New York, California, Louisiana, and the District of Columbia, which found that recidivism rate was less than 5% among people previously sentenced to life in prison for violent offenses. The U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics data revealed that 98% of persons released from prison on homicide convictions are not rearrested. Many other studies confirm that, in fact, criminality decreases with age. The Sentencing Project found that the crime peaks at 19, but declines more than 30% by the age of 30 and more than 75% by the age of 40, meaning the age crime curve is factual. And as neuroscience Robert Spokesy put it, the greatest crime fighter been on earth is the 30th birthday. Life without parole incarcerates the aging population, therefore cannot be justified. Resistance to reducing punishment is irreconcilable with these facts, facts my opponents cannot refute. Certainly, individuals who have not rehabilitated should not be released. But the evidence is clear that individuals, even those convicted of the highest offenses, have a 98% chance of rehabilitation when given the opportunity through the parole system. The men and women on this team strongly believe that each human deserves that chance. Ladies and gentlemen, humans are repairable. I was 22 years old when I was sentenced I was 22 years old charged with murder. I was 25 with an IQ of 68, diagnosed with mental illness when I was sentenced to 360 years. I'm 54 years old. I've been incarcerated the last 31 years. I served 2 decades in solitary confinement with no hope, no educational program, no human contact, trapped in a cell 23 to 24 hours a day. My first ray of hope came in 2018 with the Second Look Law. This law gave me hope and motivated me to rehabilitate myself to someone who could not read or write, to the man you see standing before you here today, who actively engages in any educational courses offered. I'm a second-year graduate of the UDC Paralegal of Law because I wanted to know what was being said while I was sitting in the courtroom. My first debate was against Georgetown University last fall, and here again I stand today debating. In 1996, the Washington Post said, "I will never see the outside of a prison again." That same newspaper in 2024 said, "I'm the symbol of rehabilitation." All deserve the right to hope. And if you close hope in a cell, there is no future for society. The revocation of hope not only harms those we incarcerate, but is also a sign of a morally deficient society. The men and women on this debate team standing beside me believe that all Americans should stand for rehabilitation, not retribution. That humans are repairable, and that every person deserves the hope of a new path. For when hope is given, change is possible. My past is my past, my future should be my future. This country must ensure that all persons given the opportunity for a second look should be given for a second look. And as I hold this Washington Post newspaper up, I hope the next time that I'm holding this next Washington Post newspaper up, it will be with me and my teammates on it, and the title saying that life without parole has been abolished. I appreciate you all.
Tori, I'm doing the second suggest LWOP should not be abolished for a variety of reasons. The first would be that victims' families' concerns are more important than concerns of people that are incarcerated. The second is that worse offenders, such as first-degree murderers, cannot be rehabilitated, and somehow keeping them in jail makes society safer. The third is that abolishing LWOP will increase use of the death penalty. And the fourth would be that somehow maintaining LWOP will lead to a lower rate of recidivism. They say that maintaining LWOP gives juries an option to avoid the death penalty. Juries should have multiple options to avoid the death penalty because we don't agree with that as a good system of punishment. Additionally, there's no shown empirical link between LWOP or maintaining LWOP and increasing the death penalty. In fact, when the use of LWOP was increased, the use of the death penalty did not decrease. Therefore, there's no reason to expect that the inverse, reducing LWOP, will somehow increase the death penalty. In fact, Professor Mao at the University of New York did extensive research on this and found again that there's no evidence that abolishing LWOP will increase the use. Secondly, that there's no empirical evidence that links the two. And thirdly, that the death penalty is on decline nationwide for a variety of reasons that are independent of LWOP, such as constitutional challenges, the inability to find the drugs necessary to actually have executions, and the change of execution protocol. Additionally, the death penalty really has no long-term future. In fact, even Virginia, a state that historically executed more than any other, ended capital punishment in 2021. Also, it's important for the negative to consider and recognize that both penalties force people to die in prison. One through unnatural means like lethal drugs or electric chairs, and the other through internal natural causes like heart failure, cancer, self-harm due to harsh prison conditions, and the lack of proper medical care and mental health resources. The negative also suggests that LWOP somehow helps decrease recidivism. That argument is not supported by any evidence. As we mentioned earlier in our speeches, certainty versus severity is actually the deterrent for crime. In other words, LWOP, as found by a study from Professor Beckett of the University of Washington, LWOP is not actually any deterrent or does not reduce crime as opposed to life with parole. In fact, they found that the only deterrent effect of life without parole is actually the word life. The without parole does not provide any additional deterrent. The data, again, on this subject supports us. Additionally, empirical evidence, frankly, the only empirical evidence on this topic was done by Professor Goldstein at the University of Pittsburgh, who again found not only that victims' families don't equivocally support longer prison sentences, but they recognize, along with a majority of people on all political sides, that longer prison longer prison sentences are not more just than shorter ones. Additionally, the argument that victims' families, the concerns and feelings of victims' families overweigh the opportunity or the suggestion to abolish LWOP is not founded based on a variety of reasons. First, there's no unequivocal data that shows that all victims' families support maintaining LWOP. In fact, majority of victims' families, according to some studies that we cited earlier, would like the LWOP to be abolished and prefer shorter prison sentences. There's no actual evidence that the negative is cited that suggests that having LWOP on the table somehow will provide more reassurance or more support for victims' families. In fact, as we've mentioned before, the way to actually support victims' families would be to provide things such as victim offender mediation, psychological and medical support.
Economic development.
Thank you. And finally, the idea that worst offenders cannot be rehabilitated is false. Anybody, everybody has the possibility to change, even the worst of the worst. Frankly, distracting everybody by mentioning a few worst outlying cases is just distracting from the fact that the negative is on the wrong side of this argument. LWOP is inhumane, it's costly, it does not make us safer, it's racist, it's a tragic waste of human potential, and it's time to join other democracies, other democratic nations, and abolish LWOP.
My name is James Baldwin. I will also be giving the second negative rebuttal. I will start my speech with a recap of all of our previous points or our previous speeches, and then I will answer the affirmative points. I must remind the judges that we do not endorse LWOP in every case, and we say that it can only be used in cases for the most dangerous offenders. They list examples of rehabilitation working, but these studies are overwhelmingly about cases that are not about first-degree murders or other most dangerous offenders. Our Barack evidence says that instances of New Mexico's choice to completely and totally abolish the death penalty was not only because of LWOP, but was because activists and judicial officials were able to use the instance of LWOP to dissuade people from using the death penalty, which ensured a mass decrease in the death penalty being used. Even if they're right that the death penalty doesn't have a long-term future, in the world of the plan, it would last longer. Absent LWOP, juries will choose the death penalty more. Juries in the status quo are given the choice between the death penalty and LWOP, and in those cases should attempt to choose the lesser of the two, which is LWOP. In the world where LWOP is abolished, they will have to choose the death penalty, which will serve its revival in states and ensure that Virginia would not completely abolish it. Answering the affirmative points about rehabilitation, we cite pieces of limb evidence that cite multiple studies highlighting that the release of 336 homicide offenders was highest in the felonies homicide group, and conclude that the majority of homicide offenders reoffended within 2 to 3 years of their release. This is empirical evidence that we have cited multiple times throughout our speech, that the affirmative claims that we have. Abolishing life without parole for individuals is harmful to society, as it allows first-degree murders to continuously cause harm within various areas of the country, and revitalizes the use of the death penalty and harms progress toward limiting capital punishment. The state of rehabilitation today is that many, while some programs successfully reduce recidivism, none eliminates reoffending. Nor do they have the best accurate models guard against the risk of releasing someone who will go on to commit a serious violent crime. Answering the affirmative points about high costs associated with LWOP, the counterplan that we have introduced would catalyze rehabilitation programs for all criminals except for first-degree murders, which accesses the same level of rehabilitation programs that the affirmative cites, creating the same outcomes as the affirmative states, merely preventing the violence that is inflicted from the first-degree murders. So it is only a question of preventing the death penalty from continuing to occur. I will end my speech with an overview of what our counterplan does and how it differs from the affirmative case. I must note, while the affirmative points are about why LWOP is unethical and that rehabilitation, they have failed to consider the fact that the counterplan still bans LWOP for most offenses, just not for the cases of the most dangerous offenders. The counterplan resolves the asked issues of human dignity, cost, and other instances because the counterplan seeks to abolish life without parole sentences in all instances except for first-degree murders. Even if the act does not completely endorse the death penalty, we have listed evidence that proves states where juries have the choice between the death penalty and LWOP, they will choose LWOP. Absent that ability to choose, they will choose the death penalty more. Even if incarceration means death in prison, it still ensures some form of life and some ability to access things that people enjoy and can do to have a high standard of life. It also, the counterplan upholds society's code of decency, as the block evidence says that life without parole is an expression of the standard of decency by being reversed for the first-degree murders that take humans' life. And the counterplan logically avoids the affirmative's concern about costs because it gets rid of life without parole for the majority of criminals but keeps it for first-degree murders, which would ensure that the costs would be minimal. Our last point about the counter plan is that the crime and naked evidence says that the affirmative is too morally lenient by not allowing for bad actors like first-degree murders to be controlled, increasing violence within large-scale populations, which would ensure leading to a decrease in public safety, which is one of their other points. I will end with the conclusion that yet again, you must evaluate the plan that is most ethical in balancing justice and public safety. The only difference between the affirmative case and the negatives counter plan, the only difference between the affirmative case and the negatives counter plan is that the negatives counter plan successfully avoids the issue of the death penalty that the affirmative does not have any evidence on, and also ensures that it solves the entirety of the act and is sufficient to resolve human dignity, costs, racism, inequality, and anything else that the affirmative may address in their final speech. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lorenzo Goldsmith. America prides itself on being the most democratic country in the world, but how can the greatest democracy in the world imprison 40% of the world's incarcerated population, with 83% of the world's prisoners serving life without parole? A democratic nation doesn't define a person by their worst day or worst decision. Life without parole violates any democratic notion of human dignity because we cannot have liberty or happiness without hope. America is built on the idea of hope. The idea, if you work hard enough, you can achieve anything. So what hope are we giving the men and women that are serving life without parole? Isn't the central idea of our criminal justice system rehabilitation? So I ask, how can we find out if our men and women are rehabilitated if we don't give them the chance to try again? And the cause, do you really believe that we should be paying $60,000 a year to imprison someone over 60 years old? We can better spend our money on rehabilitation programs. Don't you agree? So you should agree that life without parole should be abolished as well. Life without parole is an experiment built on the idea that it will reduce crime, and that idea has failed. And we have shown the data and facts that prove that our plan isn't perfect, but nothing's perfect. The government isn't perfect, the parole boards aren't perfect, and the prosecutors aren't perfect. Even today's debate was far from perfect, but we believe our idea and our plan best represents that life without parole must be abolished.
My name is Anna Older, and I'm outlining why you should vote negative in this debate because the counterplan solves almost the entirety of the affirmative's case while avoiding increases in the death penalty. You should vote negative for a reasonable and measured life without parole policy. They have not specified to you how sufficient rehabilitation is determined or how the government determines this policy, which means you should bear negative on our explanations of how an overarching outlaw policy should function. And I would remind you that we are not indicting all offenders, but saying that we should carve out exceptions to deal with first-degree murders. Abolishing life without parole in all instances except in regards to first-degree murder solves the injustice the affirmative is attempting to rectify because it allows us to reallocate resources and reduce psychological distress while ensuring that the most dangerous offenders in society are not allowed out of prison. It is your moral imperative to vote for the policy that removes first-degree murderers from society because of the threat of reoffending. Their rehabilitation arguments do not assume people cannot be reintegrated in society like Jeffrey Dahmer and other serial killers who are at a high risk of reoffending either through murders or general violence. Even a 1% risk of this causing being abolished, causing serial killers to be let out should make you feel comfortable voting negative. Additionally, it avoids an uptick in death penalty decisions. Our argument is not retributive justice is good, but when juries are faced with the option to give a first-degree murderer a lighter sentence that allows them to be let go or a death penalty, they will err on the side of the death penalty. Every argument they have given you about why we have made society more retributive is a reason that juries would err this way, which means you should vote negative on the counterplan.
For the college students, I hope some of you aspire to become lawyers someday and appear in my courtroom. I'd love to have you. I think you've exhibited the capability to do well in that arena, and I hope it's something you at least consider. In reference to the affirmative team, I hope that you got a lot out of this and that it gives you a greater appreciation then you have to keep hope alive and have to believe that there's a better day, because there is. And, you know, I say this to a lot of, especially when I was over on the Superior Court and had a lot of juvenile cases, and tried to encourage young people to overcome their circumstances and end up doing well in life, is that all of us were not necessarily predestined to be where we are. And it's but for the grace of God that some of us are where we are, because that clearly fits my situation. I'm from the same area of the country where the Marshall's from, and many of the guys I grew up with, unfortunately, were just as bright as me, played sports just as well as I did, but unfortunately didn't do as well as I did because of circumstances many times beyond their control. I was not predestined to be where I am. I myself was in the juvenile justice system 3 times, and fortunately did not elevate to the adult system, and that was to a large degree because I played football well and had a football scholarship and was able to escape my situation and ended up where I am now. So I hope that you all appreciate that hope is there, and if you believe in yourself and you work hard, you never know, you may get there too. And I hope that's the case, because you all exhibited, I think, the real capability to do well in life. But we have to select a winner, and that's hard. And to be honest, you all had it tough, obstacle to deal with. And, when somebody can give a life story like Mr. Cunningham and show that despite his circumstances that he is at a point probably where he's deserving of a second opportunity, and the presentation he made just made it very difficult, I think, to conclude other than the affirmative teaching. I'll let my co-judges make some comments before I'll make some final comments on my perspective about your presentations, but I don't know who we start with.
I just want to congratulate both teams. You both did an excellent job. I echo the judge's sentiments that anyone in this courtroom should think, who performed here today, should think about law school at some point. I worked at a law school, so that's my little plug there. You all were organized, thoughtful. You were making evidence-based arguments and really had thought through your positions and the counter-arguments. That's something we talk to the law students about all the time. It often gets forgotten that you have to think about, well, what's the other side going to say? And you all thought about that really deeply. So congratulations to all of you on that. I just want to say that I think you all have great talent, and I really think we saw today how it's not just the mind that can win a great debate, it's also bringing the heart and really speaking from the heart, and I think that that's a big part of what makes a big difference. I really was impressed by some of the things that came out that I just hadn't even thought about. And so I just want to give everyone a shout out for thinking so deeply and thoughtfully about all the issues. And I love the way you have the 2% recidivism rate, but you were talking repeatedly about how 98% were not going to reoffend. That was such a nice shift. That was beautiful, and I really liked that you all talked some about the victims. That they might have some real concerns. But you were bringing in, there are other families involved here too, all of the families of those who are incarcerated. I really liked all the ways that you brought in the thoughts of all the people who are affected by this policy. So I'll stop dominating the judges' comments here and let some of my fellow judges jump in.
Well, I I just want to say congratulations to all of you. This really was a wonderful event, and I am so honored that I was asked to participate. Let me just say this. The best evidence of the affirmative argument is you people right here and what you did today. For anybody who believes that when you are judged on the worst day of your life, or for some people more than one day, that they don't have the capacity to change, that they don't have the capacity to advocate for themselves, that they don't have the capacity to be good parents to their children, good siblings, good friends, productive members of their community, they're just wrong. And you have shown that through your advocacy and your hard work here today. You know, we got a form that had a lot of parts to it that talked about the analysis, the reasoning, the evidence, the organization, the refutation. All of you clearly thought through and prepared your remarks, with each of those categories in mind. And of course, I know this side was doing that as well and probably had many more years of preparation, maybe in high school debate and college debate. This is what lawyers do every day. This is what judges have to do. And you all did it today at the highest level. So I congratulate all of you today, and I congratulate the winners.
This is great to be able to do this again this year. Thank you, Judge Faruqi. It is a tremendous honor to be here. And unlike most of the lawyers and judges in this courtroom, I'm not a debater, so I'm learning more and more each year doing this. And I agree with everything my fellow bench has said here in terms of the quality of the arguments on both sides, the analysis, your ability to refute the other's arguments, your evidence and support were all outstanding. And for the JMU folks, I know this must be a very, very busy time of the year for you. I would imagine exams are just around the corner, and for you to take time out of your very busy schedules to be here today and participate in this historic event is really, really appreciated. And you outstanding advocates, and I too hope and expect to see you in this courtroom, this courthouse one day. We're rarely in this courtroom. But turning to the DOC team, you all were tremendous. I want to give each one of you just very brief comments. Let me start with Mr. Gardner, extremely strong, compelling start with the affirmative case. You got the team off to a tremendous start. Mr. Perkins, I knew from seeing you in my courtroom that you were going to be good at this. I didn't appreciate this good. You're fantastic. Well done. Ms. Cunningham, you did an amazing job responding to the other side's case. And I don't have the debate lingo, but you refuted their arguments exceedingly well. Mr. Cunningham, what to say, you hit it out of the park. You keep doing what you're doing. You keep mentoring the other inmates, as I know you do. You keep improving yourself and taking classes and learning and gaining more and more credentials. You are an inspiration for all of us. I know you're an inspiration for the folks you see every day inside the jail, and those walls do not stop you. You are an incredible positive force for change. Woo! All right, Ms. Hoppy, you too, like Mr. Cunningham, this was round 2 for you, right? You debated last year, and you were comfortable then and even more comfortable this year. So You should think about the law. Mr. Goldsmith, you brought it all home very, very effectively and efficiently at the end. So well done to all of you.
I just want to echo what was already said, and also note just two other points. One, it's very rarely the case where I think it's this fun to watch somebody debate, and it often is fun when people genuinely believe in what they're saying rather than just arguing it because it just happens to be the side they're assigned. So I thoroughly enjoyed this experience. And then the second one is you all each had a way of communicating that made it easier for me to digest what you're saying. You know, it's one thing if someone's just reciting a bunch of facts, but you all tied it into a narrative and then even connected it with your personal experience so that when I walked away, I felt like I truly learned a lot from you all. And that's the best thing I think somebody can say from when they walk away from what you had to say. You want people to retain it. Just as on a technical level, I wanted to point out a few things you all did that I thought was very convincing. I mean, the first thing I thought was extremely convincing was the way you framed your position. And that's what I thought kind of took away a lot of the thrust of their point. I mean, your argument was, you know, life for some people, but we're saying parole should always be an option, because when they talk about recidivism and they talk about people, I mean, you're not saying release everyone, you're saying give them a chance. So I didn't really feel, walking away after listening to you, that there really was this huge risk that you're talking about, that's given how reasonable you made your position. The other one was accepting certain consequences. I mean, when people say there's a risk of recidivism, I was really convinced when you said, look, I mean, you're right, maybe not everyone will be rehabilitated. And yeah, you know, maybe some people will commit crimes, but then again, some people who, you know, aren't incarcerated will out there commit crimes. We can't eliminate the full risk of everything. And then especially the way you framed, the way life without parole is a functional death penalty. You know, when they kept talking about how this could lead to a shift, and you're saying, well, why is that really as bad than what people go through now when you deprive them of hope? I mean, these arguments I thought just were so effective, I think, at really taking away whatever persuasive force could exist for the other side. And it just shows that you put a lot of thought into this. I do want to commend you. This was a tremendous amount of fun. It was definitely a pleasure for me to watch you all today. So thank you.
I'm sure it's no surprise, top speaker of the other team, Harold Cunningham. Mr. Cunningham, he's like me, can't get him near open mic. I told real quick though, Mr. Cunningham.
I just want to thank y'all all for coming. And
By the way, I want to say there's a whole nother room watching, because there's so many people who want to come out here. There's actually an overflow room, so there's a second courtroom that's full of people that are watching this.
yeah, I want to thank y'all for giving us this opportunity. I want to thank y'all, the judges and everything like that. That Judge Faruqi, man, I know what for real. Judge Faruqi brings hope to us all and everything. The programs that he implemented come in, as well as with Georgetown, we got Val there. But the doors are open. No, guys, I'm gonna get best bet. The doors been open for these programs to come in by Warden Director Jacqueline Williams.
That's right.
She had my back, letting me mentor the youth and everything like that, and I want to be grateful for you. And my professor, you know, if y'all don't know a Professor Snow, don't take no, man, she just go hard, you know what I'm saying? I want to say this about our coaches. From the smallest one, sir, she might be the smallest one. She got the biggest heart than ever. I mean, her heart is, it's hard to describe the things that she do for us and how she inspires, and we appreciate it. Toy, I seen your growth. I told you, I appreciate everything you do, and you the next big thing coming, and you under the right guidance with Judge Faruqi. Me and Ern got a common while we don't smile a lot, but we smile inside. And I'm learning, I look forward to learning more about you. But our real debater and our closer is Mr. Jackson. And this ain't about me, this is about my team. Because when I say unity, man, this is a family for real. And I want to say this, because I'm just turning around, but our principal, Mr. Jason, that's our principal. He gave me the opportunity to be able to mentor the young brothers down in school. He constantly let me know, hey, when he need me for something or to talk to somebody, man, and I appreciate you having that belief in me, man, and I might can help a person out, man. So I thank you for that. So I want to thank you all, and I don't know because she one of the judges, but Judge Friedrich, man. Just say this one thing. I met her, and man, the second time we met, we was talking for like 3 hours. And like when he said you can't judge a person, even though she was a Trump opponent, like, nah, for real. You know, I did my research, but her mind, man, she's so inspirational to me, man, and she just don't know how she encouraged me to continue to do what I do. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Where do we go? Come on. Well, this is our main camera person right here.
I'm sure.
1, 2, 3. All right.
Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, Charles.
Look over, sorry.
1, 2, 3.
Dr. Sharon. Woo,
Dr. Sharon. Woo.
That first affirmative. All right.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, Tori. Woo. All right, Miss Mars.